Last vocab section. I know there's been a lot. Let's get to our first word right away, and that is nationalism. Nationalism, you can see here, basically patriotism, feeling very strong about your people. It can be a feeling of superiority or feeling like you're better than other people, but mostly it is a feeling of intense pride in your nation. When we talk about Filipino nationalism, German nationalism, it is basically in this era looking at your group or your ethnic group as a nation, as a people, and it'll become real significant because it'll basically mean trying to put borders around your people and to form a nation state based on your ethnic group or your people, like in the Philippines, Argentina, and Germany are some examples at this time, and feeling really proud of who you are as a nation. You can also make an argument this happens in the United States during this era of nationalism as people start seeing themselves as Americans rather than subjects of Britain and the colonies. And that is nationalism, or feeling proud of your nation. Marathas. These are basically the champions of Hinduism in India. These are basically a group of people who will be fighting against the Mughal Empire, which is an Islamic empire that did try to blend Islam and Hinduism together. Marathas are more, they want pure Hinduism. They want to be Hindu rulers and resist the Mughal Empire. This is significant because they will fight against the Mughal Empire, even establishing their own empire, Maratha Empire. And because there's resistance, it makes the Mughals weaker, which make India have kind of a civil war in this era and makes it easier for Britain to overtake and rule India in this era of imperialism. The Taiping Rebellion is a rebellion led by against the existing Qing dynasty or the Manchus at this time. It is led by a man who believes that he is basically the second son of Jesus Christ, so he had contact with Christian missionaries, which is very important, and he believes he's the second son of Jesus Christ, is able to establish an army, and has about a rebellion that lasts over 10 years, and the Qing dynasty consistently tries to put this down, but has difficulty doing it, which causes internal war, basically internal conflict or war in China, which also makes it easier for the British to come in, win the Opium Wars, and allows other countries to come in and basically take land and power away from China. So the Taiping Rebellion is a rebellion by a man who is pretty poor, who could not pass the national examination. He is a Christian, believes he's the second son of Jesus Christ, leads mostly peasants against the existing Manchu or Qing dynasty. Significant because it weakens China and allows Britain and other powers to come in and imperialize China and makes China again much weaker. Harriet Tubman was an absolutely incredible person. Harriet Tubman brought thousands of African American slaves from the south to the north, many of them all the way to Canada in the time period before the Civil War and during the Civil War when the United States had slavery. Harriet Tubman had a gun with her. She was able to follow directions by the stars. If the African American slaves who were going to freedom decided they wanted to turn around, she basically told them, you go forward or you die. She was a complete badass, She also had epilepsy, which means that she had seizures, which is pretty incredible. She was able to do this while sometimes having seizures. She became a spy for the North in the Civil War, and literally is just one of the most incredible people you will learn about. She's very historically significant because she shows a resistance to slavery that existed in America both before and during the Civil War. Frederick Douglass is one of the greatest people in American history, period. Frederick Douglass was a former slave who escaped slavery, learned how to read and write, and became one of the biggest abolitionists. And an abolitionist is someone who's fighting against slavery. With his writings, with his speeches, he was able to even become an advisor to Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War, and advising and help the North with how to fight against the South. And he was a tireless worker and abolitionist who had his own newspaper and even did everything he could to end slavery in the United States. Very historically significant because he's another person who shows the resistance that was against slavery that existed in the United States at this time in the modern era. The ghost dance was led by an American Indian, Wowoka. This was a dance that was in resistance to the American Indians who were put on reservations. They were put on the Standing Rock Reservation in North Dakota is where the ghost dance was happening. And Wowoka and a number of people were doing this dance, which the goal was, if they kept doing this dance, that eventually the white people would be wiped out and the American Indians would get their land and way of life back. This ghost dance scared the American government because they thought the Indians were rebelling. So what they did was they launched a military operation against them at Wounded Knee, which was a massacre of many American Indians, men, women, children, everyone. A horrible tragedy at Wounded Knee that led to the deaths of many American Indians. And the ghost dance is historically significant because it's a sign of resistance that American Indians had against being occupied, being put on reservations in the United States, but also showed that America at this time was very afraid of the American Indians and was willing to kill them to have any resistance for them trying to protect their way of life. I also find it very historically significant if you've learned about Standing Rock, what's going on with the pipeline at all, being put across some American Indian land, that it's basically being put across the same reservation where this massacre at Wounded Knee happened earlier. The Socia cattle killing movement. This is also going to go with non-Kwawuzi. The social cattle killing movement was very similar to the ghost dance in this time. It was a basically religious belief that basically non-Kwawuzi said that if the social people, if they killed their cattle and burned their crops, that this would cause the ancient spirits to come up and wipe the white people off the land, and that this would give the Africans who lived there their traditional way of life back. So very similar to what the ghost dance was saying in some ways. Unfortunately, killing the cattle and burning the food, non-Kwawuzi was able to convince many people to do this despite opposition. People who opposed her were seen as not having faith and that they were ruining it and that it wasn't going to work. And killing all this cattle ends up leading to a huge famine, which kills many of the Socia people, which makes it easier for Britain to occupy and take over South Africa, and also just eliminates about 70,000 people who die in this absolutely horrible famine that comes up because cattle were the essential way of life for the Socia people at this time. And I believe I'm saying that wrong. I'll have to check my pronunciation on that, so I believe it's wrong. But that is a Socia cattle killing movement, and not Kwawuzi. Olympia de Gouges, who is known for her writing called The Rights of Woman. This is a response to the Declaration of the Rights of Man. She wrote the Declaration of the Rights of Woman, which is basically saying that in the French Revolution, that the men, you've forgotten the women, that women are, she would say, definitely the stronger sex when it comes to having birth and doing many other things that women do that men do not, and that their rights should not be neglected in the French Revolution. She pushes this forward, and eventually she's beheaded in the French Revolution for her beliefs. Historically significant because she really launches the spirit of feminism, which will become stronger in the modern era and the contemporary era as well. And she's killed for her beliefs, which shows that there's definitely resistance to feminism that exists in this era. Tom Ritchie has a great video about this on your packet. Watch it. It's amazing. He does an excellent job. And I'll give a shout out to him because his video is amazing. All his videos are really good. So shout out to Tom Ritchie, AP teachers. Mary Wollstonecraft is also another early feminist. She is from Britain. She's famous for her disagreement she had with Edmund Burke, which was talking about the significance of the French Revolution. Edmund Burke was more of a conservative who thought we had to rein things back in, And Mary Wollstonecraft was someone who said, no, there needs to be more rights for people, and especially for women. She wrote her work, The Vindication of the Rights of Women, which became basically a leading call-out to feminism, which will inspire much feminism that follows after her life, which makes her very historically significant in pushing the feminist movement. And she sees revolutions like the French Revolution as ways for people who don't have power, especially for women, to come and rise and to gain power. That's Mary Wollstonecraft. The Seneca Falls Convention is a convention where a number of feminists like Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Lucretia Mott, come together in Seneca Falls, New York, and basically set out what they think should be the rights for women. There's heavy debate whether voting should be sought after or not. And actually, Frederick Douglass is one of the people who speaks and says, yes, women should try to get the right to vote. Women should have the right to vote. Frederick Douglass comes. He's a feminist at this time as well. You can be a feminist and be a man, by the way. Just means that you think women are equal, okay? I'm a feminist, and I should be. In my opinion, everyone should be. There, I said it. All right, so basically outlined that women should have more rights, one of them being the right to vote. Other rights, reproductive rights, if a man, ditches out on his responsibilities, that they should have to pay and help with the child. This is the Seneca Falls Convention. What comes out of it is the Declaration of Sentiments, which is very important and very historically significant. The Declaration of Sentiments is written like the Declaration of Independence. This is a lot like Olympia de Gauche, who wrote basically the Declaration of the Rights of Women for the French Revolution. In America, there's the Declaration of Independence, and then later, women write the Declaration of Sentiments, which is basically saying, we forgot something here, guys. We forgot the women, and women need to be equal as well. One example of this would be voting rights. So the Declaration of Sentiments leads to much of the feminist movement in America, Britain, and other places as well. Whew, that's all our vocab words. We're going to make it through this, guys. We're going to make it through it. All right, keep up the great work. Always proud of you.